The toughest years for the state of Oklahoma came early, very early. Less than 25 years after statehood, Oklahoma, like the rest of America, dealt with the desperation of the Great Depression. But that wasn't the state's only challenge, and not even the biggest. There was also the unthinkable disaster of the Dust Bowl, which blanketed Oklahoma from 1930 until 1940. It was, as writer Timothy Egan referred to it, the worst hard time. It was against this backdrop of bankruptcy, desperation, and desolation that Ross Flood, a wrestler from Blackwell, Oklahoma, launched a sparkling career in wrestling that would take him to Oklahoma A&M, around the world, and into OSU's Hall of Honor. Flood and his teammates would become the first sports heroes in a state desperate for any good news. They were arguably the first dynasty in the history of college athletics, with 16 national team titles in 19 years. And Ross Flood became part of that championship machine early on.
At that time, Oklahoma State, under head coach Ed Gallagher, had pretty much a dynasty rolling from the 20s, and it was going into the 30s now. He would have had Olympic champions to look up to as a youngster, like Bobby Pierce and Jack Van Beber, who won Olympic gold medals in the Los Angeles Olympics in 1932.
Arriving at Oklahoma A&M to wrestle may have been daunting, but Flood did not show up empty-handed.
These guys are fascinating to read about because they have amazing backstories. Here's a guy who he was related to Daniel Boone. He and his brother were the first twins to win Oklahoma State high school championships.
The Flood twins, Ross and John, did indeed make history by winning high school championships in the same year, the first twins to accomplish the feat. And, for the first time, the name of Ross Flood was associated with wrestling greatness. Using his high school championship as a launching pad, Flood's career in Stillwater remains one of the greatest in the orange and black. He was 31-1 all-time at A&M, and in an era in which he was only able to compete in 3 NCAA tournaments, Flood brought home 3 individual national titles and 3 team championships. He was the 4th 3-time champion in school history. His teams were 23-0-1 during his career. He was the NCAA's Outstanding Wrestler in 1935 when he won 3 of his 4 matches by fall. Even today, nearly 90 years later, he still tops OSU's career charts with a pin percentage of 59.4%, stemming from 19 falls in 32 career matches. In the era of the Dust Bowl and Great Depression, Oklahomans were inspired by the school's wrestling program and the likes of Ross Flood.
Well, it does inspire a lot because they were from Oklahoma. The majority of those champions in the 30s, 40s, 50s were from Oklahoma that helped build this great dynasty heritage here in Oklahoma State wrestling.
After conquering the high school and college ranks, Flood's sights were set internationally after winning the 1935 and 1936 AAU championships. At the historic 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, Flood became A&M's first silver medalist and the 4th medalist overall.
You automatically associate that Olympics with what they referred to as Hitler's Olympics. But at the Games itself, he didn't have a problem with the German. The Hungarian, they often decided the rules when you got there at the Olympics, and many of the Americans didn't really understand them until they got there in Berlin and found out there was a rolling fall. Well, the Hungarian caught Ross in a rolling fall, but Ross was leading the match. The U.S. protested that match, maybe too much, because they talk about how they had to get him under control. He was that caliber of a wrestler.
Flood was also the winner of the 1937 Pan American Exposition in Dallas, emerging victorious over 3 other national champions. But in the process, he suffered a rib injury that would end his competitive career and launch a new stage of life. For 6 years, he was a successful high school coach in Stillwater. He then entered the Navy to spend 5 years as a physical instructor, including wartime service in the Pacific Theater. He returned to coaching in 1946 to revive the wrestling program at Southwestern Oklahoma State, then purchased a livestock auction in Stillwater, which he operated for 3 decades. Billy Sheridan, the famed Lehigh coach, often declared that Ross Flood provided the best example he had ever seen of wrestling skills and techniques.
That ability to be, self-sustaining and is really impressive. Take those values that you learn from sport, and you get your education, and you go on and have a successful family and life, and boy, it couldn't have been better. What a great example, and we shouldn't forget Ross Flood.
Tonight, we ensure that we will never forget 2024 Hall of Honor inductee Ross Flood.